Hello, I'm Tim Gormley of Burial Beer, and this is the Brewer to Brewer podcast from All About Beer. My guest today is Zach Coleman of True Brewing, and he is here for a conversation that goes beyond the brew house and into topics that matter to brewing professionals and curious beer drinkers. First, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media at allaboutbeer. And to support journalism in the beer space, check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer. We'll get into the conversation in just a moment, but first, this message.
Unlock iced tea flavor with First Tea's Instant Black Tea. Quick dissolving and easy to dose, Instant Black Tea makes it convenient to create that refreshing iced tea flavor. Use Instant Black Tea with lemon, peach, or raspberry for a line of fruity iced tea beers or hard teas. Try it with botanicals like lemon myrtle, lemon balm, and lemongrass. Email info@firsttea, that's FIRSDTEA.com to find out more.
For more than a decade, the Beer Law Center has been dedicated to the craft beverage industry, meeting the legal needs of breweries, wineries, distilleries, and all manner of alcohol producers and sellers around the country. From company formation to federal and state licensing, trademarks, regulations, and compliance, or if you're buying or selling an alcohol business, the Beer Law Center should be your first call. The firm never charges for an initial consultation, and if they can't help you, they'll help you find someone that can. Have a legal question? Contact the Beer Law Center on social media at Beer Law Center and online at beerlawcenter.com.
Ironheart Canning is the quality leader in mobile canning and much more. With a decade of packaging experience, Ironheart is your turnkey solution for all your canning needs. Ironheart has no minimums on their mobile service, great supply chain quality control like no other, as well as technical support programs. Need canning materials? Ironheart has you covered with cans by the pallet or the trailer load, PackTex case trays, and can ends as well. Ironheart Canning. You have the capability because Ironheart can do it for you. Visit them at ironheartcanning.com or email info@ironheartcanning.com.
Malteurop Malting Company is based in North America, specializing in growing and producing quality malts for the craft beer and distilling industries. With local farms and malt houses spread across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, MMC's commitment to excellence is fully ingrained into every batch it produces, ensuring breweries and distilleries of any size can create the finest beverages on the planet. Visit malteuropmaltingco.com to learn how Malt Europe can support your malting needs. Or you can contact them at customer success@malteurope.com or call 844-546-MALT for questions or to place your order. Malt Europe, premium grains from field to flavor.
Okay, Zach, let's get into it. A bit about my guest today. Zach Coleman has been brewing professionally for over 12 years. He started as a volunteer on a canning line and worked his way up to head brewer before taking over the beer program at True Brewing 11 years ago. He has since developed a full lineup of beers that includes clean ales and lagers and mixed fermentation ales with a focus on balance and combining locally sourced ingredients. He is now Director of Operations, overseeing in Denver and handling all back of house operations for True's second brewery in Asheville, North Carolina. I have heard of that town. Very special place. Zach, so awesome to have you on here. Thanks for joining me.
Oh yeah, thanks for inviting me on.
Of course.
Stoked to do it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I figured I'd just give a quick kind of a backstory on like how it was I came to pick Zach, because I think it's worth noting I just certainly didn't take this decision lightly. I think it's this podcast is really cool, and to be able to kind of pass the torch to somebody that I really admire is a really special honor. And so, I was just thinking about like our time through the years, however long it is that we've known each other. I think it probably goes without saying that I really admire you as a person, as a brewer, as a musician, as a creative force and a storyteller. But I feel like every time we've kind of crossed paths through the years, that was at a beer festival or a CBC or GABF or whatever it was, I felt like that we were always kind of able to get past the the kind of like small talk, if you will, and kind of get right into like real life conversations, which for me personally, that's kind of a rarity. So I've always like really cherished that and our relationship. And of course, now you're living in the same town as me, which is still incredibly surreal. It's just been just like super thrilling to be able to actually like get together with you and hang and shoot the shit like more regularly. Um, so again, thanks for being on.
Oh man, that's all very flattering. I I appreciate you saying that, man. And I really couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that obviously that kind of mutual respect and appreciation goes both ways, and it's just so cool that yeah, now that I'm here, we get to actually hang out and see each other more than like once or twice a year or whatever it
Right.
kind of ended up
Yeah.
being.
Yeah, totally. And I tend to think that there's definitely got to be some sort of reason we were able to connect the way we have. And I think that it is kind of undeniably like the shared ethos or philosophy on things and like kind of having a shared interest in the things that inspire us. So I did kind of want to start
Hmm.
off the conversation by talking about just kind of inspiration in general, because I think it can be so telling of, someone's approach to what they create. But before I do that, I did kind of just want to give you an opportunity to like slightly expand your bio into music because it is quite kind of pertinent in my mind to like the conversation that we're going to have. Can you tell us just like a little bit about your world as a musician?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. So I am a drummer and currently play drums in two metal bands, one called Chemist, another called Black Curse. I've been playing drums for over 20 years and getting in the van and touring for about just as long. So music has been a really central part of my life since I was like 16 years old. I always wanted to play in a band and tour around, and I've played in a number of bands over the last couple of decades and been able to do some really cool stuff. And so still doing that and trying to keep everything, as balanced as I can, which is to say not at all, but um yeah, still doing a lot of music and a lot of brewing. But yeah, music has been such a huge part of my life. I mean, we could talk about music for the next 3 hours and it would
Right.
be
Yeah.
easy. Yeah.
And generally we do
Yeah,
because
yeah,
when
yeah,
we
yeah,
get
yeah.
together. And I know this is a brewing podcast, so we'll try not to completely turn it into a music podcast. But being just a music lover and a metal lover, I've always been pretty fascinated by that part of your life, and honestly, like amazed how you can juggle both, which I'm sure we'll get into. But uh, the first question I wanted to ask about kind of the inspiration piece is, not the most creative question, certainly one that I've been asked many times, but um, I think it's a fun one. Do you kind of cite a specific beer as being like your epiphany beer, the beer that you tried and kind of opened your mind to what beer could be?
Sure. I remember this moment really vividly. Um, it was the beer is Le Fin du Monde or Le Fée du Monde or however you say it. I couldn't even come close to pronouncing anything French, so I'm sorry. But from
I'm with you.
Unibrew.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember I was at this British pub. I had been drinking beer for a number of years, but and not thinking too much about it. I'm from Texas, so I basically just drank Shiner and Ziegenbach pretty much nonstop because it was $1 usually anywhere you went. So, but I remember the moment I was at an English pub, and for some reason that beer was on the menu, and I just had never heard of it. I saw that it was 9%, and I thought that sounds pretty cool. So I ordered it, and it blew my mind. I can remember it so distinctly. Like I just couldn't understand how you can have something taste like that, much less a beer. The flavors were so interesting and nuanced, and it just was like a like time slowed down, and I'm sitting there thinking about this beer for like in some ways the first time in my life, and that kind of sparked a love of clean Belgian beer that has only has only grown over time, I think. So
Mhm.
that was really the one that, and that kind of led into a whole slew of other things, but that was the real moment.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. Do you have any sense of like roughly how old you were at that time?
That must have been just right on 21.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, do you feel like there's a kind of a subsequent discovery, like once clearly that kind of opened you up and maybe led you down a path to want to discover more? Was there a subsequent beer that you feel like really inspired you to like the types of beers you wanted to make, or is that it?
That was a big one, but I mean that led right into like finding kind of the old school Saison DuPont, and kind of being fascinated by that world. And then also like very much at the same time, like finding these insane IPAs, which it was like the bitterness wars of the time.
Right.
But really, what really interested me, just I could like kind of understand how IPA worked. I was really fascinated by like these saisons and just Belgian beers in general, because I couldn't understand where those flavors were coming from. I didn't know anything about brewing at the time. I thought they were like adding stuff to the beer. I
Right.
knew nothing. So
Yeah, I would totally resonate with that. Like fermentation forward, if you will, beers where so much of the
mhm,
character comes from the flavors that are produced from the yeast have always been the most exciting for me. Just to see to experience the beer evolve like in the tank every day is so fun.
totally.
Um, on the same kind of note, but to flip over to like the music side, was there specific maybe band album or a band or an experience with music that kind of like opened your mind to maybe metal specifically?
Oh yeah, same kind of thing. I can remember it like very clearly, just like the Unibrew moment. I was much younger, but I have an older brother. He's 4 years older than me, and we were raised like with rock and roll and stuff. So I knew what like heavy rock sounded like. So metal wasn't like so crazy to me, discovering it. But I remember he handed me my brother handed me Metallica's Master of Puppets, and listening to that for the first time just totally melted my brain. I like couldn't get over it. I was really obsessed with the instrumental track Orion. I don't really know why, looking back now, but I used to just listen to that over and over. But it was on cassette at the time, that we or whatever we had was cassette anyway, and so I would like annoyingly have to like I'd get like halfway through the song and then want to start it over and have to like try to get back to the start of it. And yeah, just fishing around in the cassette tape for it. But yeah, definitely Master of Puppets was the first thing that kind of pulled me into metal, and just like what the hell is this? I have to know more, and that kind of very quickly led into like Sepultura and just like all kinds of stuff after. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty funny to me because I Metallica was also kind of my introduction to metal, which maybe isn't that weird considering they're like one of the biggest and most important metal bands of all time. But
yeah.
for me, it was Ride the Lightning, and I can still remember the moment quite vividly as well when my friend Jake, I think I was in middle school, but my friend Jake, I was just hanging in his bedroom and he put that on, and I was just like, what?
Oh, totally.
Yeah. And still to this day, love the shit out of that album. And really all those early Metallica albums, as many times as I've listened to them, they kind of never get old.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah. So to go from like kind of having these epiphanies with beer, to kind of, I guess, making the decision to get into brewing. What was it that initially drew you to want to work in the craft beer space?
I picked up brewing, like home brewing as a hobby, like when I was finishing up my graduate work, because I'd become so interested in beer and I wanted to understand how it worked. And I was living in a very rural place in Texas. I think there was about less than 1,000 people um, there at the time, and there wasn't a lot to do. And um, just needed something to occupy my mind outside of, going to school. And so I just picked it up as something to do on the side, and I got really obsessed with it, which is pretty normal for me. Uh, but I started like entering these homebrew competitions, which is really unusual. I just wanted feedback, and I didn't have anybody else to get feedback from around me. Um, and I started learning hands-on, like the brewing process and just kind of how the basics worked. And so that was going on in the background, and kind of what I feel like I learned how to teach myself things as like the years went on. And so I kind of took on home brewing like you would like a graduate program or something. I bought all these books and I just started studying everything I could on my own to try to teach myself everything everything that I could. And at the same time, I finished up at college and went into the workplace, and very quickly realized that the 9 to 5 office wasn't going to work for me.
Can
I
relate to
just,
that. Yep.
yeah, I couldn't do it. I wasn't fitting in, and I was okay with not fitting in that environment. And so I thought, well, shit, what am I going to do? I thought, well, I like brewing. I'm now spent all this time learning a bunch of stuff about it. I'm just going to give it a shot, maybe see if I can do it. And at the time in North Texas, there was like Rar and Sons Brewery and maybe one other, but not much on the small scale. I mean, the scene hadn't really started there at all, and so I thought I need to go somewhere where there's a bunch of breweries around if this is something that I want to try to do. And I'd always liked Denver. We would go visit on vacation and stuff over the years, and I played some shows there and some of my old bands, and I thought the mountains were nice, and it was far enough away from home to seem enticing. So I just packed up my shit and moved to Denver. I didn't have a job lined up. Um, Nothing. I had a couple of friends in the metal scene, and they kind of helped me find a place to live. And I got a job in Colorado Springs as a technical writer. My education's in English, and and then I started volunteering at some breweries around as well. And so I would commute down to Colorado Springs to go work the office job, and then finish up work there and drive back up to Denver. And like where I was volunteering was actually north of Denver, about 20 minutes. I would drive up there and, go work there for a handful of hours and go home and sleep for like 5 hours. I did that for, I don't know, 6 months or something like that. Till I was able to land just an entry level job at this startup brewery,
Right.
and got my shot there.
Amazing. Cool. So do you think that for you it was like this desire to like craft beer, to brew it, to kind of like have your hand at creating those flavors that inspired you, or just kind of that in conjunction with wanting to not work at a desk every day?
No, it definitely was. I mean, I was motivated to want to try to do this, like, because I really wanted to understand the craft, which is like a big thing for me. Like the craft of brewing is really what keeps me going and interested in over the years. Like kind of take away all the social elements and stuff. The craft is what still interests me um, to this day. And I definitely like felt I had 100 ideas. I wanted to do all this stuff, and I wanted to understand how everything worked, and still do. I still feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that feeling of feeling like you don't know what you're doing despite doing it for so long. There's always new things to learn.
Always.
Yeah. I'm curious if you have any specific person that you kind of maybe refer to as your like mentor in beer, like somebody that kind of taught you the ropes, or maybe not necessarily the ropes, but taught you certain things that really changed the way you think about beer?
Yeah, I kind of have a couple, not like a directly like pure, you know, um, mentor role, but the first brewery I worked at, there's this guy, Nathaniel Miller, and he taught me a lot. And I still think about some of the things that he taught me back then. There were a lot of really good ideas that I think were kind of ahead of their time. And then like as I kind of grew as a brewer, I was able to make friends with some people in the industry, and Lauren Limbach and Peter Bukart have ended up being really great resources for me to kind of bounce ideas off of or get feedback on beers from. So they not direct mentors necessarily, but there's just such an amazing wealth of knowledge, in Colorado that I was able to and fortunate enough to kind of like be able to pull on, and they were open to me bringing them stuff and giving me feedback, and that was like hugely valuable to me, and it still is. I mean, I went before I did the series of clean Belgian beers last year. I called them all Dead Monk, like a little separate series.
Yeah.
But I sat down with Peter Bugart and was just like, "Hey man, I'm thinking about brewing these beers. They're really hard to make. Do you have any tips for me?"
From a
And
from a true Belgian man,
from a true Belgian man, I thought, what better place than the source, right?
right?
So it's about as close as I was going to be anytime soon. So and he was able to give me really good, some really good feedback and some ideas on stuff I might want to consider. So yeah, it's there's definitely been people there to help me along the way. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. As you were saying that, I was just thinking to myself, like how like surreal it can be. It's obviously more so maybe when you're new to the industry, but like these moments to be able to meet brewers that you've kind of looked up to, or like were huge inspirations, and that now you're kind of like contemporaries, if you will, or you're like you're able to just talk beer, talk brewing with these people that are kind of legendary in the scene. I try not to let that be lost on me. But I'm kind of curious from that same perspective, like, but on the musician side, like, are there any maybe musicians in general, or maybe more like specifically like drummers that you kind of like really, really looked up to or saw as like these legends that you've then gotten a chance to meet with, or maybe even like tour with?
Yeah, there's been a few. I mean, like being friends with Dave Whitty is so fucking cool to me still.
Yeah.
He's amazing and a mega beer nerd and just so cool and nice. It still like just kind of blows my mind that just like hang out and drink beers and stuff.
I know
And
I
like,
haven't really been able to hang with him too much, but we do like text each other from time to time, and I'm always like
yeah,
pinching myself.
yeah, totally, man. I mean, like Chemist just did that Mastodon run, oh God, I don't know, a year or two ago or whatever. And just getting to see Braun play every night was like insane.
Right. So cool.
Like motivating and extremely demotivating. No.
You're like, I'm an
uh,
idiot. I don't know how to drum.
oh yeah, for sure. But you know, I think at the same time, it's like I really admire and look up to those guys, but those weren't my inspirations for drumming necessarily. I have, my guys were like Frank Beard and Bill Ward and Brian Downey and you know, let's see, uh, Bernard Purdy, like real
Yeah.
groove oriented guys. I just always love that. And then like on the extreme end, like Fenriz and Hellhammer and stuff. I was like obsessed with how you play a blast beat that fast for like 6 minutes straight.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like,
Yeah, I've always been, I mean, Chemist is a band that I've always kind of struggled to explain to people, like, where it fits in the metal like subgenre world, you know what I mean? But
mhm.
I often have kind of said like it's basically like a rock and roll band, and like knowing you and like
Yeah.
where you grew up and what music that you're really passionate about, like, from the 70s or whatever, it just feels like that it makes a lot of sense in my mind,
Oh, totally. I
that
think,
you play in a band like
yeah, yeah. And it's like I feel really lucky to kind of have found those guys. I mean, for years before that, I was playing more extreme black and death metal, which is still, I still love to death and is still such a big part of my life and world and stuff. But finding those guys and be able to play with them is like I get to do all this kind of like rock based, stuff, which I also love a whole lot. And so I'm really glad I can do both of those things. It's definitely very gratifying. I remember early on when we were rehearsing, the guys started harmonizing like some riffs, and I was just like, yeah, that's it. That sounds like Iron Maiden. That sounds like Thin Lizzy. That's awesome. And then
right.
I kind of was like, okay, I know where I'm coming from on the drum side now. Got it.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. um how would you describe the band? Chemist specifically.
I think Ben called it like Iron Maiden if you stuck him in a tar pit and forced him to play all slow, kind of like that.
Amazing.
But we also like, I think as the years have gone on, we just don't really even worry about genre stuff anymore. It's like, hey, we want to throw in kind of like a black metal style riff with this melodic Swedish death metal part with a doom chorus right after, and yeah, why not?
Right.
So I
Yeah.
I describe the band just as heavy metal, just heavy
Sure.
metal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Um, for me personally, I've always been such a music fan and record collector, but not a musician personally, and but I've always gotten a lot of inspiration from music, and I feel like I have found ways through the years to kind of like connect the worlds in various ways through my own filter. But I'm kind of curious, like from you, authentically kind of living in both spaces, like what connects music and beer for you, if anything?
It's funny. I don't really connect them in my brain. It's like two different things for me.
Yeah.
And I think there's like elements of it that cross over. There's creative elements that are somewhat similar at times, but I really think about them, just speaking for myself, like I think about them totally differently, like especially like from a creative perspective or even a technical perspective. They just like different parts of my brain in a lot of ways, and I don't really think about them in a in the same, like one thing influencing the other.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think they meld really nicely together. Like they go
Sure.
together,
Right.
music, beer, and stuff in general. But as far as the creative side, I don't have a lot of through lines.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've always wished that the concept of touring was like more of a thing in beer. I mean, of course we do festivals all over the place, but
Yeah,
you
that's what we'll joke about that with the brewery. Like, okay, we're going on tour, you know,
know.
like,
Right. I know. I mean, I guess I come from a era where one of the kind of most compelling parts of craft beer was like you kind of had to go to a place to get it from the source, you know. I was never much of a trader.
yeah.
And so I think it would be kind of cool to be able to like some brewery like have a brewery like come to you, but only for one day, you know, which I guess, you know, obviously happens in some way with festivals, but
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
I think that'd be cool. I'm kind of curious, like from your perspective, you know, well, I guess I should start by saying, like, from my view as a metal music fan, and also from just like following what True has been doing for a long time in Denver. Um, and you know, I know you guys do a lot of like you host some shows for like your anniversary and stuff like that, and various like musicians in the Denver scene have worked for you guys in various capacities. And the Denver scene just seems to me like really vibrant in the metal world. I'm curious, like
Hmm.
for you, do you has had an effect on like the scene, or like in what ways do you think True has affected the scene there?
Yeah, interesting. I think, you know, obviously we've done some stuff directly, like you say, like help host shows, whether that be, you know, putting shows together ourselves or promoting them or you know, trying to work with venues to get metal shows going on. We've definitely done all of that. And then I think maybe just as importantly, like, you know, True is kind of a place for, and just, you know, well, for really anybody, but it functions as a place for outsider weirdos to kind of congregate. And I think it's important to have places like that those things help hold up and bolster a scene, like, you know, the metal scene that we have in Denver, where, you know, obviously the brewery and the metal scene go hand in hand there. And then we also like we try to be very welcoming to touring bands, just like in general, but especially heavier music, and have a place for them to come relax maybe before a show and get a beer or not, just somewhere to, you know, chill and hang out at. And I think it's just having a place for that community to congregate has been, you know, really beneficial for the scene, or I hope it has anyway. Certainly don't think it's hurting.
Right. Yeah, I think you kind of tapped into a question that I also had written down for myself. Just as it pertains to the brand True, and it, when you can even think about like the way that True is spelled, the kind of imagery that is connected with True. True is kind of in my mind very synonymous with the metal culture. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel like that is like I find it to be very compelling and cool because I personally I see a lot of value in the kind of like the connectivity that can come with a certain like subculture, like a niche movement, if you will. But at the same time, it's kind of like it might be a bit intimidating to certain people, or some people might be like, "Oh yeah, I don't know, I'm not into metal. Like maybe that
Mm-hmm.
isn't the place for me." It can kind of go both ways. Like, and it sounds like you're able to certainly see the kind of advantages that have come with fostering like a certain community, um,
Yeah.
which makes sense. Do you feel like have you had to grapple with some of the like disadvantages that have come with that element of the brand?
To some degree, for sure. I think there's going to be certain people who are just going to be turned off by the experience, no matter what is going on with the beer. And I think that's just part of the experience of the brewery. I think it cracks me up now because I'm sure you've seen it, but I see articles like kind of constantly about like how to set your tap room apart, and I'm like,
Sure.
I think we got that one.
Right. No doubt.
So in some ways, like in a lot of ways, it's worked to our advantage from that perspective as well. I
Right.
always think like this. Ultimately, I think about it like this. Like we're a neighborhood bar essentially for Denver and Asheville, and if we can provide a interesting or cool experience where people ultimately, hopefully, feel comfortable coming in, that's really what we want to do at the end of the day more than anything else. And I do think that we have been able to do that. I think about there was this little Vice documentary on the brewery forever ago. Please don't watch it. It's very embarrassing.
I'm definitely
But
watching.
oh man.
It.
But they were shooting just some B-roll, and they were shooting some B-roll like right after we opened, and everybody sitting at the bar was in like a button-up dress shirt and slacks because it was just people who work in the neighborhood coming and getting a beer after work, which is really normal for us as well. Like that's also our crowd, and I love that. I love that that exists.
Right.
But they were like, they were like, "Is this who normally comes in here?" I was like, "Yeah, this is our regular crowd." And I was
Right.
like, "But I know what you mean. Come back at like 9 p.m. and you'll get what you want."
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. Yeah, it is it's such a cool experience. And like, yeah, it's just always been, I guess, hard for me to like separate it in my mind because it's the type of place where I walk in and I'm like, oh fuck yeah, this is my spot. These are my people, but
Hmm.
I can totally understand the other side of that.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
And then I think to myself, now all of you know how it feels when I walk in and the Grateful Dead is just fucking blasting. No, I'm joking.
Oh yeah, there's none of that. There's none of that at all.
Nah,
They didn't read the article about differentiating themselves.
yeah, yeah,
All right. Well, we're going to take a short break for this message and then come right back for more of this conversation with Zach Coleman of True.
Not your grandma's tea bag. First Tea's instant black tea unlocks a world of flavor possibilities for your beers and hard teas. Ditch the messy loose leaf. Instant black tea is easy to use and dissolves instantly. Every batch is perfect with their standardized instant tea. Consistent results with no more guesswork on steeping times. Email info@firsttea, that's FIRSDTEA.com to get instant teas and other botanicals for your next brew project.
For more than a decade, the Beer Law Center has been dedicated to the craft beverage industry, meeting the legal needs of breweries, wineries, distilleries, and all manner of alcohol producers and sellers around the country. From company formation to federal and state licensing, trademarks, regulations, and compliance, or if you're buying or selling an alcohol business, the Beer Law Center should be your first call. The firm never charges for an initial consultation, and if they can't help you, they'll help you find someone that can. Have a legal question? Contact the Beer Law Center on social media at Beer Law Center and online at beerlawcenter.com.
Malteurop Malting Company is based in North America, specializing in growing and producing quality malts for the craft beer and distilling industries. With local farms and malt houses spread across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, MMC's commitment to excellence is fully ingrained into every batch it produces, ensuring breweries and distilleries of any size can create the finest beverages on the planet. Visit malteuropemaltingco.com to learn how Malt Europe can support your malting needs. Or you can contact them at customer success at malteurope.com or call 844-546-MALT for questions or to place your order. Malt Europe, premium grains from field to flavor.
All right, we're back. All right, so I wanted to touch on just kind of another thing that I know about you, Zach, personally, that maybe not everyone knows, but I've always kind of admired it about you as well. And that I guess knowing that you studied English, it makes some sense. But I know that you're just really into reading. You're a big books guy.
Hmm.
I remember there's been kind of times in the past when you were a little bit more like active on social media and you would kind of post these, photos of passages that meant a lot to you or that you found to be profound. And I don't know, for whatever reason, maybe it's just because we live in these modern times where it feels like, you see that bumper sticker that's like, we still read. And it's like, oh yeah, that does actually seem novel these days.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm just kind of curious for you, like, obviously we all have very finite free time and how we choose to give the things we give, is a considered thing. And, what is it about, kind of spending this time inside of a book that brings value to you?
Yeah, I think reading kind of allows me to explore myself and experience things in the world that I might not fully take in, just kind of the exercise of stopping and forcing yourself to be very in the moment, whether it be reading a book or just kind of even putting the book down and looking around the room and just taking in what's around you. I find that to be very valuable. It kind of like grappling with conceptual ideas that often come up in reading, um, almost forces me to constantly reassess my own ideas and ideals, and um, it allows me more space to think conceptually. I kind of I feel like it expands my field of potential understanding. Um, and that's kind of one of the things that I love the most about it, as well as a lot of times it's challenging to do. And I kind of gravitate towards things like that. Um, I kind of live for these moments similar to like music, where you find like a sentence or a passage that just stops you in your tracks and makes you just sit there kind of in awe for a moment or consider. Um, and I mean, ultimately, it makes me feel less alone in the world, which I know is so funny because you're basically doing this really solitary thing. But knowing that maybe there's something there that you can relate to that somebody else wrote, there's an instant connection, and then there's a whole community of people around that usually who can relate to it, and it's just I think it's a great exercise mentally for a number of different reasons. And I also just look at it as like a good way to pass time. I don't think about it like it as this great knowledge giving thing necessarily. It's something that I like to do, and I often just really bounce off of like TV shows and movies for whatever reason. I don't know, I have a hard time um spending any amount of time watching TV. I'm just kind of restless, and but for whatever reason I can sit there and read kind of like, you know, as much as I'll be allowed to.
All right. Oh yeah. That's such a beautiful answer. That was a real mic drop answer. But yeah, it makes so much sense. And yeah, I love the way your brain works there. I think that so much of the the joy that I get out of like experiences, moments with food or beverage or music are I'm kind of like in this constant search, I guess, for those moments that kind of like blow your mind. And I can totally imagine finding that in the written word. I mean, and we
Mm,
obviously every human being reads, right? Like we have lots
of
of shit
course.
that we read. It's not always a book, but I love reading like really descriptive like music liner notes. You know what I mean? Like that brings me into the world of how it was created, and I think that that's really interesting. And knowing you how I know you, with the things that you're kind of most passionate about, you end up kind of finding a way to contribute to it yourself. So I'm
Hmm.
kind of curious, as it pertains to, I guess, your kind of reverence for language and the written word. Does that, or has that compelled you to want to write yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I kind of write all the time and almost always do nothing with it. I did a couple of years ago, COVID time. I made a little website just kind of going through the history of the brewery and talking about the things, the concepts behind some of the beers that I've made over the years, like what made me want to make them and motivated me to do that. And then just also like just talking about like some general concepts relating to like ideas on how to make collaborations, actually mean something in the brewing world, and like these kind of more um, conceptual ideas that I've had for a little while. And that ended up being like 25,000 words or something. And I didn't even realize it. And then I ended up just deleting it because I'm really self conscious and looked at it one day and thought it was all garbage. So I just deleted it all. But I also just, I just finished writing this like 90,000 word book, and I'm going to start editing that at some point. I don't know when, but yeah.
Dude, do you have a clone of yourself that I don't know about? It's unbelievable. Unbelievable how you find time to do all this stuff. It's incredible.
I'm, you know what it is I'm very routine based human, and this is kind of why touring starts to drive me nuts after a while.
Right.
So like I like have this morning routine where I get up pretty early, and I usually like spend an hour reading and writing, and sometimes an hour of each thing. It depends on how early I get up. And then I'll go into work and brew and do that stuff, and then get off work and play drums. And um yeah, I don't have a lot of downtime because I can't. I just like I don't know what to do with downtime. So
Right. No, that's amazing. Well, I look forward to a moment where we can read more of your stuff. And I also know you well enough to know that you sometimes think that certain beers you made are garbage, but no one else thinks it.
mhm.
So sometimes you just kind of like, let it go, let it be. Um,
I know
but
this is I'm
easier
trying
said
to
than
to
done.
look. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Right. Um, the other day I was kind of like sitting out front, just kind of gazing and contemplating our conversation, and I was thinking
Mhm.
about, books that I wouldn't consider myself a big reader by any stretch. There were periods of my life that I was, but I was just kind of thinking about some books that are meaningful to me, and um I started thinking about this book called Murmurs of Earth, by Carl Sagan, which is kind of like this documentation of the Voyager golden record. And for whatever reason, as much as this, like, I've noted, I guess, periodically through my life that this was an important book to me, but it was never really like on the tip of my tongue as I thought about um, books that, favorite books of mine or whatever. But for whatever reason, in this moment, I was like, man, that book really is wildly important to me. And it has certainly kind of I don't know, changed the way I think about the idea of kind of like curation, I guess, for lack of a better word. Like that book and the position that Carl Sagan was in, to be essentially asked to curate, like, what does it mean to be human? And this idea of,
Mm.
like, how do you choose the things about humanity and about history of humanity that you'd want an alien life form to know about, that feels like so purely like who we are. And I feel like I curate a lot as a personally, just kind of like have this deep desire to want to tell people about things that I've discovered that I think are really beautiful and valuable, but maybe a bit under the radar. Um, and yeah, it's a fun concept. And I was thinking about as creators and as craftsmen, we are essentially curators in a way, pointing to creations that came before us and giving them new value by enlightening our audience to them, or um, disallowing them these things to be lost through time.
Mhm.
And I feel like with you and I, brewers of our ilk, I guess you could say,
Sure.
that are, kind of putting a lot of effort into these certain beer styles that maybe are a bit under the radar, underappreciated in America, maybe specifically, or maybe even just globally. I mean, there's often this discussion of certain beer styles like Saison as a good example, how if it wasn't for American brewers, the style may have been lost through time. And as you said earlier, you put a lot of love into making these Belgian styles. And I feel like from my view, True is kind of maybe most known for the mixed culture program. I mean,
Hmm.
you have a
Hmm.
place called the Acid Temple, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, like it feels like some of these really romantic, beautiful styles are kind of disappearing in some ways. Like there's a lot of discussion within the beer community that like mixed culture beers, sour beers are just like so hard to sell. And a lot of people have
Mhm.
been culling, their program or drastically reducing it. Um, Saison is a style that, certain breweries are trying really hard to keep it going, but sometimes it just feels like no one seems to care, or a small audience seems to care.
Yeah.
How, I don't know, I guess, how do we like reconcile with this, or how do you reconcile with this
Yeah.
concept of like
Yeah.
trying so hard to keep these things alive, and they just not feeling like we're getting anywhere.
Well, I mean, to be totally honest, it's been really heartbreaking over the years to see kind of like the decline of some of these styles that I care so much about, just being so personally invested. Whether from the creation side, spending so many years and hours making these things myself, or just experience them and traveling, untold miles to experience them, and just kind of seeing these things either fade away within our own program or within the industry. It's really tough because, ultimately, brewing is business. And so there's always got to be a balance from that side of things. But I also think it is, you know, somewhat our duty as people who are invested in the craft of making beer, and beer as something that is um, that has significance beyond just a consumable commodity, that we kind of hold these things up to some degree
Yeah.
without bankrupting our businesses, and and try to shine a light on them. And I think, you know it's just we're also fighting a big force of people in our industry that don't care about craft, and the total commodification of beer is exactly what they're going for. um, and kind of like couldn't give a shit less if some of these beer styles die, or these less cool things kind of go by the wayside. And so I don't know, it's just kind of trying to balance all of those things, to still be able to do some of that, and to kind of, yeah, I think having conversations like this where we talk about, potentially whether it be mixed culture, saison, you know, pub ale, all kinds of things. And it's funny to see. I mean, I also I feel like I have this perspective of like, you know, um I've been playing in like different genres of metal for a long time, and I've seen the trends ebb and flow. And they always do. It always comes back around, and then it'll go back away. And so when whatever the thing is you specialize in, you hit that rising tide, it feels good. And then when it goes away, that's not so nice feeling. But I think we'll see the same thing in beer. I really do. I mean, you start to see people more interested in lower ABV beers again, kind of with the onset of NA beer in general. But like I'm seeing more like British mild and bitter and stuff than I have in a long time, and that's really interesting to me. Um, so I think part of it's just like, you know, staying true to those things that you actually give a shit about, and provide, or like kind of ensuring space for them while also like remaining flexible enough as a business to allow you to do that. It's just a tough balance, but I do think that stuff kind of comes in and out of fashion, and we'll start to see some of that as the years go on. But it's having a longer view, I guess. I don't know, kind of a rambling answer.
Well, it was definitely a rambling question. So
Mhm.
it's conceptual, so it's hard to really to
Yeah,
make it super succeunct. But
I
I
don't know
guess
if I actually said anything, but there you go.
I liked it all. I liked it all. I'm curious if like, so let's just say in this hypothetical scenario where there was like this I don't know, like a government funded grant, or like a almost like a grant like an artist would receive. Like if somebody with a lot of money really believed in you specifically as a brewer, and and just was like, here, take all this, do whatever feels right to you, with no financial concerns whatsoever. Like, what would you create? How would it look different from True as it currently stands?
Hmm, interesting. Um, I don't know that it would be like hugely different. I think I would do some I would do some more saison
Yeah.
because I am missing being able to do that more regularly. And I would do some more clean Belgian beer. And I think really more than any of that, I would just allow time around all of those beers, because I think, you know, like so often in production environments, like, yeah, it would be great to be able to lager this beer for 10 weeks or give the saison 2 months, you know, and be able to condition it, cold condition it to kind of round it out before pushing it through. It's just not reality. Those are kind of the sweet things that I would love to be able to do, is just allow more time um, for process stuff. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I feel you there for sure.
And just like having more time to conceptualize, I often feel like it's like, you know, you're always pushing, speaking for myself, like it's just like constantly coming up with new things, or, you know, variants of things, and maybe having some space to really like reassess what I would want to be doing in that way. It's,
Sure. Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I feel you there for sure. I'm always like, I mean, I guess it's probably true for almost any creative mind, like being forced to do it or doing it in a short time span always feels a little icky, right? Um,
I
and
think
it
I just often like, you know, like 6 months later, I'm like, I should have done it this way.
right, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I know I always relish in the moments where I can just kind of let an idea come to me organically,
Hmm.
instead of having to like sit in front of the computer and be like, okay, what is this going to be? I need to figure it out.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
On a similar note as this kind of concept of the Voyager golden record, and this idea of sending like a document into the cosmos that says, "Hey, aliens, if you discover this, this is like what makes us special." If you could send some, you know, contemporary brewer, somebody brewing beer currently in the space, like into space. Or maybe it's like, hey, we're gonna colonize another planet, like Earth is fucking dead, right?
Yeah.
We gotta colonize another planet. I mean, there's only room for one brewer. Who are you
Oh
sending?
my God. Oh man, that is so much pressure. I don't know. It's too hard of a question.
Okay, all right. Well, how about a
Yeah.
musician? How about a musician? Is there anybody that comes to mind, or like a songwriter or something, that you're just like, yo, that guy is or gal is on top of their game. Like that is unreal. People need to know about this. The aliens
Holy shit.
know about this.
Oh man. Again, just
Total
so many
curveball. I did
options.
not prepare Zach with this particular question, putting him on the spot.
I well, like for both things, I'm like, well, I don't know. I need more qualifications around it because I'm like, oh well, and it'd be cool. You know, if you want to have something weird and interesting, this would be the person. If you want like pure technical execution, you know, it'd be like this person. So
Sure.
I don't know.
Well, what do you find more valuable?
I think like from this kind of perspective of the question, it's almost like the weirder, less logical things because ultimately, I think that's what actually makes us human is like these kind of irreconcilable oddities of the brain and existence. You know, the kind of like things that the like the works of art that um, touch on something in the like universal sub unconscious that can't really be explained outside of it's pleasing to a lot of people for some reason that doesn't make logical sense, you know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, those are definitely the things that get me excited, you know? Um,
For sure. And I think that's different for everybody, right? You know, so like that's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. All right, well, it's okay. I'll let you go without giving me specifics there. But I did want to ask you, kind of getting back to this recent move of yours to Asheville. I know that when you were based in Denver, a big part of the kind of like ethos of True or your brewing philosophy was very much, you know, something that I loved about it was it felt like you were really making great efforts to celebrate the terroir of Colorado and using a lot of local malt. And I know Chris Schooley of Troubadour pretty well myself. I love that guy so much. And I know
Hmm.
y'all have worked really closely together through the years, and I think hasn't he even made a few like completely custom grains for you, malts for you?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, using local ingredients as much as we can has been like um, wasn't like central to the concept of the brewery initially, but it very quickly became like a central pillar of the brewery, like to the point where we don't focus on it all the time. It's just like a ethical kind of decision that we have made, and as well like ideological and ethical. I feel like, but yeah, we've been really fortunate. You know, I feel lucky to have been able to work with Chris and Steve at Troubadour so intimately and so much over the years. We've been able to do so much cool stuff together. I mean, all the barley is grown just outside of Fort Collins, an hour north of Denver. So, you know, 95% of the barley we use in Colorado to this day is Colorado grown. So it supports our community, it supports, the agriculture around us. And that stuff is important to me for a number of reasons. That could be a whole nother, hour long conversation or whatever. But
Yeah, no,
we've
for
been
sure.
able to do really cool stuff. We have a specific base malt that we call Truth that Troubadour does for us, and it kind of started off as me wanting to find a middle ground between two of the malts that they were making, and this was years of work to develop this malt,
Right.
and I mean, I feel like it's in a really good place now. There was several iterations of it. We were making refinements to it um, over time, and kind of each new crop year that we get into, we reassess and make sure that that's tasting how we want. So it's so cool to be able to do that as a brewer, to have that level of specificity and investment in our ingredients. I think, it's been huge as far as the character of our beers. And we also do stuff like we've done a number of like fairly weird projects and stuff. We did an acidulated rye malt. I wanted to build this base beer that was like completely unbalanced unless it underwent some kind of acidic fermentation. So I built this like really insane grist for what would be like a horrible clean beer that only balanced out with a mixed fermentation. And
Yeah.
just being able to like call Chris and be like, "Hey man, I have this really insane idea. What do you think?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, let's do it." It was all over it, I'm like, it's been huge.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, you painted the picture really much more beautifully than I could have. And I guess the kind of the question that I was leading to there was now that you're here in Asheville, what has your experience been like kind of shifting that terroir and now having worked so hard for so long on making Colorado malt work for
mhm,
you. And I know you haven't brewed a ton yet, but
mhm.
obviously you're focusing a bit on what's local to you now here in Asheville. How's that experience been so far?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been really interesting. I definitely, it's like starting all over again, basically.
All right.
So almost all the ingredient base is totally new. I mean, obviously there's plenty of similarities to stuff, that's out there and whatnot. So um it's not like that difficult, but it's been interesting. I'm kind of learning what I like and don't like about what's available and kind of who does what as far as what I'm looking for. And it's just going to be a process over, that will take a lot of time. I don't know. From my initial feeling is like I'm probably not going to be able to find a maltster out here that's maybe as flexible as Troubadour, or willing to kind of like get in the weeds and go as nuts as with me is there so willing to do. But we'll see. That stuff took years to develop, and we've been brewing out here for 4 months or whatever. So it's just going to take time to see what's possible as far as pushing out kind of the bounds of what is available to us here, and that's definitely something that I want to try to do. I think it's good for the industry and as a whole. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. I'm looking forward to seeing how that comes together for y'all. We've got a lot of really great people, malting
Yeah.
in North Carolina. So, yeah, like you said, it's all about the relationship, and that comes with time. So,
Hmm.
um, I did have another big question for you here. I know that obviously Nick Nuns was the founder of True, and um, he kind of started that thing, and then you joined the team a little bit after it was started, and have been kind of head of brewing and operations for a while now. And then a little while back, you were able to essentially become invested in the company. You have part ownership now, which I think is really special and sometimes sadly rare. But I'm kind of curious what that experience was like for you, kind of on an emotional or psychological level. Like, how has that changed the way you view your work at True?
Yeah, for sure. That was like a pretty big moment for me, and I'm really grateful to have been given the opportunity to kind of like become invested in the business in that way. Like you said, I feel like it is fairly rare. Um, so it was a really big thing for me mentally. I kind of struggled at times with like, I don't know, I like would almost like hold things back, ideas back, because maybe I would want to use them somewhere else or at some other time, um, to some degree. And I don't really know why I had that mentality, but it just, you always like, I don't know, I just sometimes would like worry about getting taken advantage of. Not that that was the dynamic. It more is just like, I don't want to run out of all my good ideas at this place, and then, I got to find work somewhere else and I don't have any, so it's like,
Sure.
oh
Yeah, and
man.
I mean, I think a lot of brewers that are working for a brewery probably fantasize about the idea of, having their own someday, whether that's
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And that was
realistic or not.
exactly. And I think I had some of that kind of thought in the back of my mind, and boy, am I glad I didn't do that. But and that's really what it was. It's like, well, if I ever did my own thing, this is a really cool idea. But I
Right.
think I look back on that and I think it's so stupid because, hopefully, creatively or whatever, you're kind of like constantly having those ideas. So you should just do the thing that you want to do at the moment, that's in your mind at the moment, push on to the next thing.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, and I'm sure
so
to some degree also it's like you might feel like you have to take this idea but kind of like chisel it down a little bit, like make it more maybe realistic for the business or what have you.
mhm, mhm, totally. And
A
I
little bit
think,
less free with it, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's been really kind of it's been really fun the last couple of years to give myself projects of like more esoteric stuff that I want to focus on for the year, and then kind of like keep all the other stuff moving. So I'm still able to do that, which is really nice. I like, I just figure out how to do it, you know, make it work, and go from there. So it's like it lets me, I'm able to do all that stuff. It frees me up a bit in a way. And then the other thing I'll say is like, outside of the weird stuff and whatever else and the ownership of like esoteric beers, I mean, and the ownership side of stuff, it's been like really nice just to kind of as an aside to like continually re like evaluate and invest in our processes just across the board. It like kind of has pulled me back to like a higher level thinking about like everything that we're doing, um, on the back of house side. And so I've been like doing more research into, I've been just pilfering the research that everybody else is doing for MBAA. Thank you very much. People who are much smarter than me, so I can pull that into our back house process and hopefully make improvements, all the time.
Yeah.
So it's been really fun to like take that on as well. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. True will certainly be better for your contributions. All right, well, the last question I have for you, and I don't know, hopefully this is something that you've thought about before. I certainly think about it often, or I think maybe I've thought about it more as I've gotten into my 40s than ever before. But like, what is your purpose in your mind, or maybe another way of asking that is what legacy do you wish to leave when you're gone? How do you think that your existence will have contributed to life?
Yeah, I this is such a hard question,
You don't say, you don't say.
I really honestly, like I really don't think about it too much. I would hope that like the stuff that I'm trying to do is like push the boundaries of what is possible as brewers out just a little bit, and whether it be, you know, kind of working directly with suppliers to expand what is possible to do, what we can get on the ingredient side, or what even um is, is just just hopefully like presenting some ideas that maybe people wouldn't normally think about. So maybe like broadening out conceptually what is possible within our craft, um and then also hopefully just like providing a place for people to gather and have a good time, and to make things creatively that resonate with people, um, whether for a short term or long term, at least a little bit. That's all I could ever really hope for, I think. Because I know for me, it's like, books and music and beer, those things have just kept me alive over the years. And so I'm really grateful to the people who have created those things that have like meant so much to me. And if I could be a part of anything like that, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I've done some kind of like exercises, I guess you could say, through the years about this concept, and one word that has always most resonated with me personally is contribution.
Yeah,
Just wanting to contribute back to the world in the ways that that like you just said, like people have created these things with their full hearts, put their dump themselves into these things that I find to be beautiful, that make my personal life so much more exciting. And so it's like the the least I could do is make some attempts to contribute back in similar ways. And um, hopefully, you know, some people find it to be interesting. That's kind of all we can do, right?
exactly. I
Yeah.
find it interesting too. So
Thanks, buddy. That's very sweet
yeah,
of you. Well, Zach, thank you again so much for chatting with me. You are such a such a creative force. You inspire me very much. I'm sure you inspire many others, and hopefully this discussion has kind of enlightened some people to the ways that you've contributed and continue to contribute. So thank you,
well, thank you so much. It's very nice.
and looking forward to hanging with you soon. Uh,
Hell yeah.
Zach will be back on the next episode of the show as the host, having a conversation with the brewer of his choosing. That will be on the air in 2 weeks, so make sure you tune in for that. Visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media to support journalism in the beer space. Check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer. I'm Tim Gormley of Burial Beer. Thanks for listening to the Brewer to Brewer podcast. Cheers.
First Tea is a proud sponsor of the Brewer to Brewer podcast. First Tea invites you to explore the rich and versatile world of teas and botanicals, including instant black tea. Email info@firsttea, that's FIRSDTEA.com to find out more.
Ironheart Canning is the quality leader in mobile canning and much more. With a decade of packaging experience, Ironheart is your turnkey solution for all your canning needs. Are you looking for a unique can size or nitro dosing? Ironheart offers filling sizes from 6 ounce up to 19.2, dedicated equipment for mixed culture products, and nitro dosing capabilities for still beverages and beer. Looking to break into other beverage segments? Look no further. Ironheart also provides a robust network of co-packing solution to get a variety of beverages in cans, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic alike. Ironheart Canning. You have the capability because Ironheart can do it for you. Visit them at ironheartcanning.com or email info@ironheartcanning.com.
For more than a decade, the Beer Law Center has been dedicated to the craft beverage industry, meeting the legal needs of breweries, wineries, distilleries, and all manner of alcohol producers and sellers around the country. From company formation to federal and state licensing, trademarks, regulations, and compliance, or if you're buying or selling an alcohol business, the Beer Law Center should be your first call. The firm never charges for an initial consultation, and if they can't help you, they'll help you find someone that can. Have a legal question? Contact the Beer Law Center on social media at Beer Law Center and online at beerlawcenter.com.
Malteurop Malting Company is based in North America, specializing in growing and producing quality malts for the craft beer and distilling industries. With local farms and malt houses spread across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, MMC's commitment to excellence is fully ingrained into every batch it produces, ensuring breweries and distilleries of any size can create the finest beverages on the planet. Visit malteuropemaltingco.com to learn how Malt Europe can support your malting needs. Or you can contact them at customer success at malteurope.com or call 844-546-MALT for questions or to place your order. Malt Europe, premium grains from field to flavor.